can take at least 20 years to build a reputation and just 5 minutes to ruin it. There are a number of case studies which suggest the link between corporate communications and reputation management. Experts say these two are inseparable. But avoiding risk to reputation is also a challenge given today's fast-paced, interconnected culture, thanks largely to the internet and to social media. BP's 2010 crisis comes to mind as there were a lot of criticism leveled against its crisis strategy, and locally the handling of Nelson Mandela's illness prior to his death by the Nelson Mandela Foundation was also criticized. Its spokesperson was fired because he apparently made a hash of Mandela's hospitalization, lying to the media from time to time about the state of his health and the reasons for his hospitalization. Experts say the truth will do just fine. And to discuss the important role of corporate communications, I have with me Monalisa Zwambila, CEO of Riverbed Agency. Welcome, great to have you on the show.
Great, thank you for having me.
Do you agree that corporate communications and reputation management are inseparable?
I completely agree with that, and it's interesting how you cited two really key events that have taken place. And I think for me, the BP scandal showcased a time when suddenly the reputation of a corporate was no longer only in their hands. It suddenly is in the domain of anyone that has the internet or that can tweet. And really that's what led to the brand's demise anyway, and they had to do a lot to regain trust. But I think the important thing when it does come to reputation are two key things. It's really around transparency and it's about building trust. And, the second thing you cited is, when you lie to the media, when you lie to the public, that trust gets broken. And obviously reputation management is about ensuring that that trust is built.
So it's very simple, just speak the truth.
Speak the truth, but obviously do it within the constraints that are required to build a brand. Yeah. But truth is really important. We are so connected, as you said. And my creative director always says that brands now really are built by consumers. And it becomes important, therefore, that brands understand the consumer space and that environment and ensure that they have the right things in place in order to build their reputations.
Of course, the challenge is that the world is so diverse in terms of culture, in terms of beliefs and values. It can be quite challenging to actually determine what is a reputational risk.
Very, very much so. And the way we approach it from a corporate communications perspective, firstly is obviously understanding the business imperatives, what the business is trying to do, who their stakeholders are, who can influence, the brand or the corporate, and how they potentially could do that. And then with that understanding, you obviously formulate a communications plan and strategy to ensure that, you manage risk as it comes by. But the key thing, I think, most businesses have evolved, and because technology is so prevalent in society, what becomes important is that we look at strategies that are quite integrated. So before, corporate communications very much was this isolated discipline that sat in a corporate office, but more and more that integration is key. So you'll find that communication strategies are very closely linked to what you would do with social media platforms, and very much linked with what you're doing above the line as well, so that you're able to provide an integrated solution to managing risk and to building your brand or corporate reputation.
I'm sure a lot of research goes into that process, but generally speaking, from your research, from your experience in this field, where do you think generally, given the diversity out there, generally where do people draw the line on issues that they consider offensive?
That's an interesting question, and once again, I believe it's really different things to different people. So, and I think it once again goes back to that trust factor. Once again, more and more, I think brands and corporates want to be relevant to the consumer. They want to be able to offer the value that consumers want. And in so doing, brands need to be sure that they protect that element of trust that consumers want from them. And that's really what becomes important.
Social media is a powerful tool today. There have been so many cases where CEOs of large companies, celebrities, stars, if you want to call them that, have said some very controversial things online only to be slandered and to be lambasted by the media. Do people really realize the impact of social media and how this impacts negatively on their brand and the challenge between freedom of expression and reputational risk?
Yes. It's also, once again, interesting. But yes, I think people do realize it as communicators and as people that obviously are custodians of brands. It's a very important area and space that we play in. And I think organizations need to be very careful when crafting and putting together social media strategies.
And individuals as well in their personal
Individuals
capacity.
as well, absolutely. You can use it to your advantage, and more people are willing to get attention and or draw, get attention based on doing really crazy things. So it's really how you balance that, and obviously who you're targeting.
Everything that you say today gets into the public domain via
Correct,
social media.
correct.
So people,
Yes,
I think
yes.
bottom line, people should realize that.
Yeah.
Especially we are leaders in our own right, leaders of our own brand, leaders of our own values in terms of what we stand for, in terms of how we want to contribute in the world as well. Everything affects reputation.
Absolutely. And once again, I bring it back to audiences, because being controversial sometimes is great. It attracts the attention that
Rock
you
the
need.
boat.
Sometimes you want to rock the boat, but you need to be prepared for the, for what happens as a result of that.
The consequences. There's so much more to
Absolutely.
corporate communications. It's become a pillar when it comes to organizational growth, driving growth in an organization.
It has, and more and more communicators have a seat at board tables, etc. And that's because business generally is realizing the impact that communication and marketing broadly has to the bottom line. And as things have changed, as consumers have become more connected, brands realize that they need to be able to engage, that they're able to differentiate themselves based on how we communicate, how we position them in the market. And as a result, definitely, I think communications is becoming very more strategic, very much more a C-suite conversation. And I think, executives are realizing its importance.
You yourself have grown to become a business leader in your own right, a maverick in this industry. How would you describe the local communications PR industry?
We're very much on par. I mean, I was fortunate enough to travel overseas for a conference a couple of years ago, and they spoke at length about what they see as the agency of the future. And I do believe South Africa can rightfully say that we're headed that way. And an agency of the future really is one where, as PR practitioners, we understand that the game has changed. Traditional PR no longer exists. The gatekeepers, or people that were gatekeepers in the past, no longer are, because we can communicate across any platform or any tool. So as a result, we really just need to do things differently. We need to understand this diverse and changing landscape and be able to provide content that people want to share, that people want to engage with, and really ensure that that content helps to influence the people that we're trying to communicate with. And that's the journey.
Sure. Given the important role that social media is playing right now, many people see themselves as their own PR ambassadors, ambassadors of their brand. How is that challenged the industry, and perhaps why is it still so important to have a professional communication expert behind your brand, behind your organization?
It's important because I think professionals understand the bigger picture. We are more strategic in our approach and are very clear about what messages we're trying to put out to market. The way a brand's reputation is built is through consistent messaging, the right tonality, etc. And what we do as communicators is obviously understand your business imperatives, what you're trying to drive, and put strategies in place to speak to that. So we see social media really as just one pocket of a plethora of things that we would use to position a business.
What challenges you right now as a communications practitioner?
Budgets, for one thing, as you rightly said.
It's always about the numbers and money and bottom line.
It's always about the numbers and the bottom line. But, as you rightly said, the things have changed so much so that, albeit we do want that conversation, we do want that connectedness, the risk is just so much larger because people can communicate, at any stage. I think also the changes that have happened and the speed at which change takes place means that we need to continue to evolve. And so what I tell my teams constantly is that we all need to evolve. We all need to be able to tell stories. We need to be able to communicate across any platform. And that means continually upskilling yourself. So albeit a challenge, I see it as an opportunity. I think what's happened, and I think the way the landscape is changing, is that you'll see less of a definitive difference between your PR companies and your advertising agencies, as an example, because that line is becoming very grey.
You've recently taken over Chili Bush. How has that positioned you in the market?
It's been a great journey, and in acquiring Chili Bush, it's really provided us with increased bandwidth, scalability. It's increased our capabilities. So we're now a fully fledged through the line agency. I think our vision really is to begin to transform the industry. I think it's still very much dominated by your multinationals. I think there's really room, obviously, for a South African-grown business that truly understands the landscape and the consumers that exist within South Africa.
It's almost Women's Month. Time
Yes.
to celebrate and inspire the growth of women entrepreneurship in South Africa, in Africa, the rest of the world. What advice can you offer to potential women entrepreneurs? And I think also in particular, what would you say are the important ingredients of an entrepreneur to be guaranteed of success?
It's an interesting one. I think as an entrepreneur, I think I'm convinced that the only way to success is really hard work. And I believe that the challenge women face is because we do so many things. We're mothers, we're sisters, we're wives, etc. And each of those roles bear a lot of importance. And to succeed in a business, unfortunately, something's got to give. You need to really be able to be focused. You need to put in the time. And you need to do so quite aggressively to realize your goals. And so my advice really is really around, obviously it starts with the passion and really being focused and knowing for sure what it is you want to do, and then putting the plans in place to make that happen, and having unbending resolve is what I speak of quite a lot. So the consistency and determination to really achieve that.
Very practical advice. Thank you so much for your time. A pleasure to have you on the show with us.
Only a pleasure. Thanks again for having me.